There comes a time in every life when silence speaks louder than words, when absence carries more weight than presence, and when the act of stepping away reveals the truth that constant closeness could never show. Disappearing is not about revenge. It is not about bitterness. It is about rediscovery, healing, and reclaiming your worth. And in your absence, they feel things they never imagined. First, they feel confusion. They wonder why the familiar voice no longer echoes in their world, why the hand they reached for is no longer there. That confusion gnaws at them, not because you vanished, but because they took your presence for granted. Then comes emptiness. The space you once filled becomes a reminder that people are not infinite resources. Your absence becomes a mirror reflecting their neglect, and suddenly they realize how much of their world was sustained by your silent sacrifices. They feel regret, the heavy weight of missed chances and ignored moments. Every unanswered call, every delayed appreciation, every careless word returns to them, echoing like thunder in the silence you left behind. They feel curiosity. They wonder where you've gone, what you are doing, and who now enjoys the laughter they once heard. Their mind spins with questions, because mystery is more powerful than explanation. They feel jealousy. The thought that you may be thriving without them unsettles their pride. They feel threatened by the possibility that someone else now witnesses the strength, the kindness, and the light they once overlooked. They feel admiration, though they may never admit it. The courage to disappear, to step back and protect your soul, commands respect. It is a declaration that your worth is not tied to their recognition. They feel fear, the fear that they may never have access to you again, that they have lost someone irreplaceable. And in that fear, they begin to understand the fragile nature of human connection. They feel pain, the sharp ache of losing someone they thought would always remain. That pain is the price of their carelessness, the echo of what happens when love and loyalty are misused. They feel awakening. Slowly the realization dawns that your absence was a teacher. They see the lessons they ignored, the love they mishandled, and the presence they once underestimated. And finally, they feel longing, a yearning for your return, a desire to relive moments they can never reclaim. Longing teaches them the timeless truth. We only value the sun when darkness falls. But this is not just about what they feel. It is about what you gain. By disappearing, you gain clarity. You gain strength. You gain the reminder that your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. So let your absence teach louder than your words ever could. Do not be afraid to step away, to vanish for a season, to remind the world and yourself that you are not defined by how much you give to others, but by how much you honor your own soul. And when you rise again, do so with power, with purpose, and with the unshakable truth that those who failed to value you once will never forget the day you disappeared. When you disappear, the very first wave that crashes into their mind is confusion. It unsettles them. They wake up one morning expecting the usual rhythm, expecting your presence, your voice, your gestures, and suddenly it's gone. And the absence is louder than any argument you could have had, louder than any explanation you could have given. It is a silence that echoes in the corners of their life, and that silence shakes their world. Confusion is a powerful force because it interrupts pattern, and people are creatures of habit. They thrive on the idea that you will always be there, always answer, always show up. They begin to question themselves. Did something happen? Did they do something wrong? Did you leave for a reason they don't understand? They cycle through scenarios in their mind, trying to make sense of the unfamiliar gap your absence carved into their daily existence. This confusion has layers. On the surface, It looks like unanswered calls, missed texts, a sudden shift in energy. But beneath, it is a storm. Their mind races, their heart questions, their pride resists. They don't want to admit that your disappearance affects them, but it does, and it gnaws at them quietly, pulling at the edges of their comfort zone, reminding them that they never truly had control over you. Because disappearing is power. It shows that your life is not bound to their expectations, that you are free to choose when to walk away, and that freedom unsettles them. Confusion forces them to see what they never paid attention to before. All the moments they ignored, the times they thought your presence was automatic. Now replay like an unfinished film. They wonder why they didn't see the signs, why they didn't realize how much weight you carried, why they didn't understand that your patience had limits. They start questioning not only your absence, but also themselves. And that questioning is a mirror they cannot escape. What makes this confusion so sharp is the fact that it was not announced. You did not broadcast your departure. You did not explain. You did not plead for them to notice. You simply vanished. And that unspoken action is louder than any declaration. It forces them into an uncomfortable place where assumptions no longer serve them. They thought you needed them more than they needed you, and your silence dismantles that illusion. Suddenly, the one who seemed dependable is now unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds a kind of fear disguised as confusion. They will search for answers in the smallest things. They will scroll through old conversations, trying to find a clue. They will replay moments in their mind, searching for the detail they missed. They will even create stories in their head to explain why you disappeared, stories that may not even be close to the truth. That is the weight of confusion. It bends reality. It twists perception. It leaves them unsettled in a way no confrontation ever could. Confusion is a teacher. It makes them realize that people are not permanent fixtures, that presence is not guaranteed, and that loyalty has boundaries. It breaks their illusion of entitlement because they thought your presence was endless, and now they are forced to see that it was a choice all along. Your disappearance dismantles the security they built on you, and in its place grows uncertainty. And uncertainty is the soil where lessons begin to take root. When you disappear after the storm of confusion has rattled their mind, what follows closely behind is a haunting emptiness. It settles in slowly, like a shadow stretching across their world, filling every corner where your presence once stood. They may not admit it at first, but the silence left behind becomes unbearable. The laughter that once echoed now feels like a distant memory. The comfort of your words, the reassurance of your presence, the light you brought into their days, all of it vanishes, and in its place, there is a void they cannot fill. This emptiness is different from loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of people, but emptiness is the absence of someone specific, you. It's the recognition that no matter how many people surround them, none can bring the same energy, the same warmth, the same balance that you once carried into their life. This void gnaws at them because they realize that your presence was not just routine, it was irreplaceable. They can talk to others, laugh with others, even distract themselves with the noise of the world. But deep inside, when the noise fades, that hollow space reminds them of the one they lost. The human heart has a strange way of measuring value while you were present. They overlook the depth of what you gave. They grew accustomed to your loyalty, your sacrifices, your willingness to show up again and again. They mistook consistency for permanence. But the moment you disappear, the weight of your absence becomes undeniable. Suddenly, the small things you did, the gestures, the check-ins, the way you listened, the way you stood by them, now carry immense meaning. They look around for substitutes, but nothing fits, nothing fills, nothing replaces. And so emptiness consumes them, teaching them that not all presences are equal. This emptiness can feel like silence that screams. They walk into familiar places and feel the difference. They scroll through their phone and sense the gap in conversations. They wake up and notice the missing energy. They may even try to distract themselves, but every distraction eventually leads back to the hollow reminder that someone who once filled so much space in their life is no longer there. And the irony is they only realize the magnitude of your presence after it has been stripped away. In this emptiness, there is also restlessness. They may feel uneasy, pacing mentally and emotionally, trying to fill the gap with things, people, or temporary comforts, but nothing satisfies. This restlessness is proof that your presence carried more than they ever acknowledged. Your presence was not just another body in the room, not just another name in their contacts. It was stability, it was comfort, it was light. And when that light is gone, darkness doesn't just arrive. It lingers. The emptiness also serves as a mirror. It reflects their neglect, their lack of appreciation, their blindness to what they had. It forces them to confront the truth that presence is a gift, not a guarantee. That void reminds them of their own choices, their own disregard, and how easily they assumed you would always be there. They begin to understand that consistency is not weakness, it is strength. And when that strength is withdrawn, the weakness of their world is exposed. Emptiness then becomes a silent punishment they brought upon themselves. It is not about cruelty on your part, it is simply the natural consequence of underestimating someone's worth. They are left with the echo of your absence, and that echo is louder than your voice ever was. It rings in the quiet moments, in the still nights, in the empty spaces where you once stood, and it refuses to be ignored. When you disappear after confusion shakes them and emptiness begins to gnaw at their soul, the next feeling that rises within them is regret. It is a heavy weight, a burden that creeps into their chest and whispers reminders of every moment they wasted, every opportunity they neglected, every word they should have spoken but never did. Regret is not immediate, it grows over time. At first, they might think your absence is temporary, that you will return, that things will go back to the way they were. But as silence stretches on and as your presence remains absent, regret begins to wrap its chains around them slowly but surely. Regret has a unique sting because it carries the memory of choice. They realize they had chances to value you, to appreciate you, to treat you with care and love. But in their arrogance, in their complacency, they chose to ignore those chances. Now those moments are gone, sealed in the past, untouchable and irreversible. They replay conversations in their head and hear themselves brushing you off. They recall times when you needed them and they weren't there. They see in their mind the look on your face when they dismissed your efforts, when they took your patience for weakness, when they assumed your loyalty was endless. And each memory cuts them deeper because now there is no way to rewrite it. This regret is like a shadow that follows them everywhere. It surfaces in the middle of the night when they cannot sleep. It creeps into their thoughts during the quiet hours of the day. It shows up unexpectedly when they hear a song that reminds them of you, when they see a place connected to you, or when they encounter someone who speaks your name. And the weight of that regret is not just sadness. It is the painful realization that they had something valuable and they let it slip through their fingers without care. The nature of regret is that it makes the past feel like a weapon. Every memory is sharpened. Every lost moment is a blade. Every silence you gave them now echoes with the words they should have said. They wish they could go back, wish they could apologize, wish they could undo the carelessness. But time is merciless. It only moves forward. And in that forward motion, regret becomes their companion, reminding them that some losses are permanent, some mistakes cannot be undone. What makes regret so powerful is that it teaches them about the depth of what they lost. Only when it's too late. While you were there, your presence seemed ordinary, maybe even predictable. But once you are gone, they realize that what they dismissed as ordinary was extraordinary. The loyalty you showed, the sacrifices you made, the energy you gave, all of it now appears in their mind like treasures they overlooked. And the knowledge that they cannot retrieve it, cannot relive it, cannot reclaim it, is what breaks them from within. They may try to cover regret with pride, pretending they don't care, convincing themselves that your absence doesn't matter. But the truth is, pride cannot drown the quiet voice inside that whispers, "You had the chance, and you wasted it." That whisper lingers, reminding them day after day that they are the author of their own loss. Regret also humbles. It bends the ego, cracks the shield of arrogance, and forces them to admit that they mishandled something priceless. They realize too late that consistency, kindness, and loyalty should never be ignored. And in that realization, they are tormented by the simplest truth of all. Once someone disappears, the version of them you knew may never return, no matter how much you regret it. When you disappear, after confusion unsettles their mind, after emptiness leaves its hollow ache, and regret begins to weigh heavy on their heart, another emotion begins to creep in: curiosity. It is not soft or harmless curiosity, but a restless kind that gnaws at them, one that refuses to leave them in peace. They begin to wonder where you've gone, what you are doing, who you are with, and whether or not you even think of them anymore. Curiosity is a fire, and once it sparks, it spreads. The more silent you remain, the more it grows, consuming their thoughts with endless questions they cannot answer. Your disappearance turns you into a mystery, and mysteries are powerful. When you were present, they thought they knew you inside and out. They assumed your loyalty, your availability, your predictability. They took for granted that you were always within reach. But when you vanish, that illusion crumbles. Suddenly they realize they don't know what you're doing, how you're growing, or what you've become in your absence. This unknown keeps them awake at night. It makes them check places they would normally ignore. It makes them revisit old conversations, scroll through your past, and search for clues in the smallest of details. Curiosity is torment because it feeds on silence. The less they know, the more they imagine. The mind hates gaps, and so it fills the blanks with possibilities. Some comforting, most terrifying. They picture you thriving, building, laughing with others. They imagine you finding joy, success, or companionship that replaces them. They wonder if you've outgrown them, if you've moved into a chapter of life where their name no longer belongs. And this lack of certainty eats away at them because they no longer have access to the answers they once believed were theirs by default. What makes this curiosity so intense is the contrast. Before, they had direct access to you. They could reach out and know where you were, what you felt, and what you planned. But now, that door is closed, and closed doors are dangerous. They spark imagination, and imagination often paints a more vivid picture than reality. Their mind becomes their enemy, creating stories about your new life, your new strength, your new relationships. And every story they create only fuels their obsession to know more. This curiosity can drive them to behaviors they never expected from themselves. They may ask about you quietly, searching for updates from others without wanting to appear desperate. They may check on you indirectly, watching from a distance, hoping for any sign of you. They may even revisit memories, not for comfort but for evidence, dissecting every detail as if your past together holds the secret to your current silence. And the longer they search without answers, the more restless they become. What they fail to understand is that this curiosity is not about you alone. It is about the power shift your absence created. When you disappeared, you took control of the narrative. You are no longer predictable, no longer accessible, no longer within their grasp. That power unsettles them because people fear what they cannot control. And curiosity is their attempt to regain control, to piece together the puzzle of your absence, to understand what their pride refuses to admit, that your silence speaks volumes they cannot ignore. In this way, curiosity becomes their punishment. It keeps them tethered to you even when you are nowhere near. It forces them to think of you in moments they least expect. It makes them imagine your life growing brighter, fuller, stronger without their presence. And with every thought, with every question left unanswered, their curiosity reminds them of the truth. They are no longer at the center of your world, and they no longer hold the privilege of knowing your story as it unfolds. When you disappear, after they have battled confusion, sat in emptiness, drowned in regret, and been consumed by curiosity, a new emotion begins to rise within them, jealousy. It creeps in quietly at first, a whisper in the back of their mind, but it soon grows into a fire that burns hotter the longer your silence remains. Jealousy is not about hatred. It is about fear, about insecurity, about the realization that you may have found something better in your absence. They begin to imagine a world where you are smiling without them, where you are thriving without their presence, where someone else now benefits from the loyalty, the love, the energy they once ignored. Jealousy comes from the awareness that they no longer know where you are placing your heart, your time, your attention. They think of how much of yourself you once gave them, and the thought that someone else may now receive that same dedication unsettles them. They wonder if you are laughing with new people, if you are sharing your stories with someone else, if someone is experiencing the warmth they once carelessly took for granted. It stirs inside them, because even if they failed to value you when you were there, the thought of losing you completely to growth, to others, to your own happiness becomes unbearable. What makes jealousy so sharp is that it is born from imagination. And imagination has no limits. They do not need proof to feel it. They picture scenarios in their head, and each imagined scene fuels their bitterness. They may scroll through your world from the outside looking for signs, searching for a picture, a word, a detail that suggests you are moving forward without them. They may ask silent questions in their mind. Who has their attention now? Who hears their laughter? Who receives the loyalty I once overlooked? And each question cuts because the answers are hidden, and the silence of your disappearance makes every possibility feel real. Jealousy also reveals something deeper. They never truly believed you had the strength to walk away. They assumed you needed them, that your world revolved around their approval, their presence, their recognition. But when you disappear and stand firm in that absence, they realize that you were far stronger than they imagined. And strength attracts attention. The more you rise in silence, the more they believe others must be drawn to you. The more you grow in your absence, the more they are convinced others now witness the greatness they dismissed. That thought gnaws at their pride, for jealousy is not only about losing someone, it is about realizing that someone else may now see the value they were too blind to recognize. This jealousy can twist their actions. They may try to mask it with indifference, pretending they do not care. They may try to distract themselves with others, hoping to numb the sting. Yet deep inside, jealousy continues its work. It doesn't fade because it is tied to fear. The fear of replacement, the fear of irrelevance, the fear that you are building a world where they no longer exist. Jealousy exposes the truth. Your absence created space, not just for your own growth, but for new possibilities. And while they wrestle with the idea of who or what now fills that space, they are forced to acknowledge that they no longer have the right to know, nor the power to stop it. It is in that realization that jealousy burns most fiercely, because they are left only with their imagination, and that imagination convinces them that your silence is not empty at all, but full of new beginnings, new people, new joys that exclude them entirely. When you disappear, after they have staggered through confusion, endured the void of emptiness, wrestled with regret, and been consumed by curiosity and jealousy, another feeling begins to tighten its grip on them. Fear, not the ordinary fear of darkness or danger, but a deeper fear, one that crawls into the soul and whispers the possibility of permanent loss. It is the fear of losing you forever, the fear that you will never return, the fear that your silence is not a pause but an ending. This fear unsettles them because it forces them to confront a truth they never wanted to face. You were never guaranteed to stay. While you were present, they treated your consistency like air, always there, always accessible, always reliable. They assumed they could lean on you whenever they wished, and that you would bend but never break, give but never withdraw, stay but never leave. Your disappearance shattered that illusion, and in its place came fear, the raw awareness that what they once took for granted may be gone for good. The fear shows up in small moments first. They glance at their phone expecting your name to appear, but the screen stays dark. They walk through places that once carried your laughter, but now only silence greets them. They reach for comfort in memories, but those memories stab instead of soothe. Slowly, the fear grows. What if this is permanent? What if they are gone for good? What if I will never have the chance to make things right? That thought alone sends shivers through their pride, because it is no longer about absence, it is about finality. Fear is heavy because it reminds them that they are not in control. When you were present, they believed they had access to you whenever they desired. But now, your silence places the power in your hands. They cannot demand your return. They cannot predict your next move. They cannot assure themselves that you will ever look their way again. That helplessness feeds their fear, because people dread what they cannot control. Your absence becomes a storm they cannot stop, and their fear is the realization that they may have lost the shelter you once provided. This fear is not just about losing your presence, it is about losing what your presence meant. You were their safety net, their source of stability, their reminder that someone cared even when the world turned cold. Without you, they feel exposed, vulnerable, uncertain. And the longer you remain silent, the more this fear matures into panic. They may replay the timeline of your relationship, trying to find where things began to crack. They may imagine scenarios where they reach out and you never respond. They may even see flashes of a future where you exist, but without them in it, and that vision terrifies them. Fear also humbles. It strips away the arrogance that made them believe you would always be there. It crushes the entitlement that convinced them they could misuse your loyalty without consequence. It reminds them that people are not possessions, that hearts are not toys, that love is not infinite when it is unappreciated. This lesson is carved into them through the fear of losing what they can no longer touch. But perhaps the sharpest edge of this fear lies in permanence. They know they can no longer rewind time, no longer erase mistakes, no longer undo the damage. And so the fear settles into their chest as a constant weight, the fear that your absence has now become your freedom, and your silence has become the doorway to a life where they are no longer welcome. This fear follows them in the quiet of the night, in the noise of the day, in every space where your memory lingers. It is the kind of fear that doesn't fade with time but grows louder, reminding them again and again that once you disappear, The person they thought they owned may never return.